Hello, good evening, and welcome, friends and neighbors, Romans, countrymen, anyone who wishes to listen in any language. My name is Samuel Trapp. You are on Dem Radio, and uh, my show is International Flavor. And I'm very glad you're listening today. I wanted to speak about my belief that Trump might be making this Ukraine war his own. Let's think about the events of the prior week and what occurred. So we started the week with a bang, with Monday with visits, and this was after the Thursday prior. Remember, it's been less than 2 weeks since old Green Goblin Zelensky monster. Uh, he visited the White House and was trying to dictate what sort of security deals would be with Donald Trump. And Trump and Vance said no. And it was pretty public. And Trump said, "You're going to agree to a ceasefire." I thought at the time and said at the time, this is going to put a little pressure on Russia, and Zelensky will no longer be the bad guy. Now the world's attention will shift to Putin, who's never going to agree to a ceasefire on these terms. And of course, he didn't. when those terms came up, he did not agree to them and did not support them, and said just what he would have said otherwise if it was still Joe Biden. He would be saying, no, that isn't an agreement I can live with. It doesn't end the root causes of the problem. It doesn't address the long term and the root cause issues. Sure enough, the U.S. sends over a negotiating team to try and force Russia's hand to agree to something. And instead, over the same time that these Ukrainians were in Jeddah meeting with Rubio and company, the exact same time is when the gas attack occurred. Oh, the gas pipe chase, whatever you want to call it, that occurred, where the Russians, and probably an extremely brave. I mean, that is some very serious soldiering there. That is some soldiering, and these people that are those soldiers are definitely heroes, and it's they'll be heroes when they come back for what they have done. And basically, they have routed the Ukrainians in that area. Some people talk about it being 20,000, as many as 20,000 people, that soldiers that were located in the Kursk region. And I tell you, I think uh, I think that Russia had it right. What Putin, when he said, because here he was talking with his Lukashenko partner, and said, well, what do we do about the situation on the ground? What happens with those people? Who's going to make the rules? When will this be addressed? It wasn't a serious proposal. And I said that when I read the State Department's release. It was a big, fat nothing burger. There was nothing in there for anybody to see and to honor. There was nothing in there for anybody to sink their teeth into and to use as some sort of attractive measure to get Russia, Putin, Lavrov, whoever, to talk to them. And there was nothing in it. When you read it, it's got all these platitudes about Ukraine wants to rebuild, Ukraine wants to do this, and most importantly, Ukraine wants the U.S. to give back the ability to use their weapons inside of Russia and quit don't cancel our U.S. intelligence, and they got it. So if you look at it from a negotiation point of view, what did the U.S. get? They get a weak beginning, very weak, to a ceasefire strategy that they're going to force upon. They want to force just a ceasefire because Trump's the biggest, baddest dog on the block. And so he's going to force a ceasefire on Putin. You aren't forcing a ceasefire on Putin. It's not happening. If you believe that, you don't believe reality. And the reality needs to come and slap you in the face, because reality is reality. Just like all the men wanting to be women, when somebody digs up their body 200 years from now, doesn't matter if they were man or woman, in their head, their body is going to say, here lies a man who died as a man, and you are a man. Okay? And I don't care. You can dress like a woman all you want. You can try to change your body, but the fact remains that unless you change out your hips, yes, you change out a little bit of bone structure the women don't have, never going to be completely a woman. You know, like they said in Monty Python, where's the fetus going to gestate? In a box. Why do you want to be a woman, Stan? I want to have babies. He said, we'll fight for his right to have babies. Oh, what's the point of fight for his right to have babies when he can't have babies? That's actually good stuff from Monty Python. They were talking about national issues, even way back then in the late 70s, early 80s. Sorry to take a drink on you. I'm a little bit parched and I haven't been feeling well. Woke up extremely early this morning and I'm not sure what's wrong with me. At any rate, none of that matters. Let's get back to the topic of the day, which is we are going to discuss why the U.S., the West, doesn't, what mistakes they're making. Here we go again. I was trying to be positive about the Rubio monster and the Rubio Trump connection and what they were trying to do in Jeddah. But when that came out, their joint statement, if you go to the State Department's website, it was just a joke. The joint statement of the Ukraine and the U.S. is just a huge nothing burger. And when you read it, the most important sentence is, the United States will immediately lift the pause on intelligence sharing and resume security assistance to Ukraine. So what did Ukraine get? Now, when they stopped that, when the U.S. stopped that, this war was over. There's no doubt. This war is over. The Ukrainians are gonna have to give up. If the U.S. told their British allies, don't give up our intelligence. Not to these yahoos. They're not getting our intelligence. This is our intelligence. And now they have it back. And what are they using it for? They're using it to use ATACMS to go deep inside of Russia. All of their strikes, any heavy strikes, they come from American intelligence, American satellites, American hard labor, American work in obtaining all of this information. They do not have the same technologies. They can't do it. And so we're giving it to them. So now, what does that mean, ladles and jelly spoons? That means that Biden's war has become Trump's war. And if there wasn't a dispute between Trump and Putin, now one is far more likely. I'm not saying it's there yet, because we're not quite there. But the snub of his U.S. envoy by Putin, of Trump's U.S. envoy, that is real. That actually happened. He instead had a meeting with, he sent some lower level delegates to speak with the envoy. Lavrov didn't meet with him. Lavrov was in the same meeting. It was Putin, Lavrov, Lukashenko, and lots of important dignitaries at this meeting, and nobody attended the meeting when they arrived. They had two videos. They had the video of them arriving in their convoy. They had the video of them departing in their convoy back to Domodedovo, the airport. And it was a pretty good signal. and then saying you're going to have an immediate ceasefire. And of course, the public opinion has completely switched to exactly what we knew it was going to. It switched to, well, here we go. Putin, we offered him 30 days ceasefire and he won't take it. He doesn't want to stop the war. No, Putin doesn't want to stop the war temporarily and give you a chance to rearm. Why would he? He has won. He has won Biden's war. The war of the West is a war between Biden and Putin won. Zelensky was just used. Ukraine was just used. And you Ukrainians that listen to me or don't because you don't like what I have to say, well, this is reality, folks. It's reality. And you have to, sadly, accept reality. We all do. When the reality finally smacks us in the face, when you keep thinking you're a woman and you have to pee standing up, well, maybe reality smacks you in the face, just like reality should be smacking the U.S. in the face right now, that this war is over. They don't need to agree to a ceasefire. They need to agree to a capitulation. This is what Russia is demanding. No, they aren't. They haven't said capitulation. They're just making it obvious on the battlefield that the West has lost. And you have your jokes like Starmer and Macron over there in Europe rallying up. Let's build some, you know how long it'll take them to build weapons that the U.S., if the U.S. didn't supply them, those weapons would take them 3 to 5 years to get to any level of supplying weapons to catch up to where Russia is. Russia's production is so far ahead of they're producing more in a month than is produced by some statistics in a year, or in 9 months that Russia is producing more weapons, more ammunition, more support materials, more vehicles, more tanks. They're producing it all. Massive production, and it is continuing. And the people are working very hard to make sure. And this has already been going on, ladles and jelly spoons. This is done. The war is over. All you need to do is recognize it, but most people don't. And this joke that they give us, here you go. Here's their joint statement. The delegation discussed the importance of humanitarian relief effort as part of the peace process, particularly during the above-mentioned ceasefire. The Russians, on the other hand, are talking about war crimes of they call them mирные жители, the peaceful residents of a city, the non-military, just the public that are living in these places and have nowhere to go or in their homes. And the Ukrainians, when they invaded, they were killing people. There's floating around a lot of these, and I've read them. It's very hard in Russian because I have a hard time reading Russian handwriting. And but I listened to some of them as they read. There was a lady that kept a diary as she died under Ukrainian occupation. Now, I'm sure these stories go everywhere and they got to go both ways. I'm sure there's some that would go on the other side, but it's nonsense to think that war crimes have not been committed on the Kursk area and nobody is reporting on it. Part of me feels like I want to go over there and report on some of these things just because I'm fluent in the language and I can go and talk to people and maybe they'll talk to me and show me some things. I think it would be extremely useful to support that kind of a trip. Maybe I need to set up a trip support channel so that people can support my efforts. A lot of people do it, but I'm nobody, but I do speak Russian. There's a guy, Patrick Lancaster, over there filming on the front, and he's got 4 kids, and I think they're younger. That he's and my kids are all grown, and if they lost their old man in some crazy incident over there, it probably wouldn't be the biggest of deals. We don't see each other all that often anyway. But and everybody eventually loses the ones they love, and so it would be very worthwhile to go over, I think, and attempt to see these. I saw that my good friend Ike Skelton has put his GoFundMe or some funding channel, and I mean to give him a little bit of money because he's truly being screwed, and I hope that he keeps up the good fight. I really do, and I'm 99% certain he will. He's at least as stubborn as me, I would think, when it comes to, he's not a guy who's going to change his opinion just because you don't like it. You can convince people of things, but you can't force them to believe. And I can be convinced, and I have convinced people, and I won't name names, but there are people who, after they listen to me, they go, oh, well, I didn't understand that part. I didn't get it. People aren't as stupid as the Americans aren't as stupid as the world wants you to believe. They're just not. They're the same as everybody else. And we bitch about our freedom of the press or lack thereof, just like they do in other countries. In other countries, they talk about, there are things you cannot talk about online. You cannot attack your government or in Russia. You can't attack them. You have to be extremely political, and it better not be anti. It needs to. You can get in trouble for that. It can be, they do come after people for spreading propaganda. Well, what I say, according to a lot of people, is propaganda. But it's the truth, and so, I don't say things just because you want me to. We say it, nobody on damnradio.com does. And if you get a chance to listen to Damn Radio, you probably should. And I'll put up the screen for how to get to Damn Radio. And then later I'll show you the ridiculous screen of of the joint release of Ukraine and the United States. But on Damn Radio, you can listen live. There's a podcast link. And if you go to the podcast link, that link shows you all of the programs that have been done in the last, forever. And you can stream through there or go through the streams and select what you wish to listen to on Damn Radio. And I strongly recommend the Ike Skelton show and what he talks about, because he's a very knowledgeable person, and he stands up for what is right, and he's not afraid of anyone. And I think that's what they want. They want us to be afraid of being arrested, to be afraid. And that doesn't mean they won't arrest you. Just because you're not afraid doesn't mean you're not going to be arrested. You need to adjust to reality too. It's time to fight, America. And I don't mean physically, I mean fight. It's we watch these things occur. I watch some of my kids, and it makes me wonder where we went wrong. Where we went wrong. How did they not understand? They've all been raised by who knows what, MTV, and who are those idiots that that used to hurt each other, throwing things. I walked in on my son. Well, I will tell stories about my son. That's I already told one that I don't regret telling, and I think it needs to be told. The realities of life need to be spread upon people. If you want to join the show, you can join the show by clicking on the link on the video and uh, and joining on in. I generally don't share this as much as I ought to. That it's that I'm doing these streams, but I would want people to have a view of them if they found it useful to them. It'd be nice to talk to someone while I do the show, and I have some interviews lined up that I'm trying to put together for you and have some people speak. But you can call in. You can join me live on the screen if you like, and discuss the events of the day and the topics of what's going on, and especially on the U.S. and Ukraine side of the world. And, Lavrov and Rubio allegedly met and discussed the next steps in restoring Russian and U.S. ties. So that article came out quite recently on the 18th of March. I'm sorry, the 16th of March. I can't see. It's not even the 18th of March yet. But they had a phone conversation. So Rubio and held a phone call with Lavrov on Saturday, and Washington and Moscow worked to restore bilateral relations and advance negotiations, according to a statement from the U.S. State Department. Let's see if we can find that and see if it's as ridiculous as the other one was. Let's read that statement and see whether it's a joint statement or not, where it came from, because I imagine it's going to be the same useless platitudes that were there before in the original joint statement of Ukraine and the U.S. We're going to put Rubio statement on Lavrov phone call and see if we can find it. Here it is. Secretary Rubio's call with foreign Russian Minister Lavrov. And it's a very short statement, but I will read it out to you in its entirety because of how short it is. It's his spokesperson, Tammy Bruce. Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke today with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. The secretary informed Russia of U.S. military deterrence operations against the Iran-backed Houthis, emphasized that continued Houthi attacks on U.S. military and commercial shipping vessels in the Red Sea will not be tolerated. Rubio and Minister Lavrov discussed next steps to follow up on recent meetings in Saudi Arabia and continued working towards restoring communications between the United States and Russia. So that doesn't really tell you much, does it? And it doesn't give us a whole lot of information where it where they intend to go. So basically, the call wasn't even about Ukraine. Hopefully, I don't know. I suppose I've spouted off and said that I think that the U.S. is making a huge mistake. Everybody knows I think that. I don't think that's really news a whole lot. And for a lot of people, especially for me, because I'm definitely, anti this war, but I understand the root causes for it. And that statement, that here's another weak. It doesn't, of course, you don't want them telling everybody what they're going to be doing or not doing, but that statement is mainly about the Houthis. You had one sentence that comes and says, anything. about what is going on or about what they can do. There's one sentence. Secretary Rubio and Foreign Minister Lavrov also discussed the next steps to follow up on recent meetings in Saudi Arabia and agreed to continue working toward restoring communication between the U.S. and Russia. So we're working toward restoring communication. We're not working toward resolving the conflict in Ukraine. We're not backing off because you've given a 30-day request that we not fight. That's not what we're doing. We are continuing to do what we think is right and have been thinking the whole way along. So, but here's how the Russians are taking it in their news channels, according to according to a statement from the State Department. Rubio and Lavrov discussed steps to reestablish direct communication between the two countries. And then it rereads the statement that I already read. The call follows high-level talks in Saudi Arabia on February 18th, in which Washington and Moscow agreed to assign teams to work on resolving the Ukraine conflict, restore embassy operations, and address other points of contentions in bilateral relations. Since then, additional discussions were held in Istanbul, focusing on diplomatic funding and a proposal from Moscow to reinstate direct flights between Russia and the United States. In the phone call, Rubio briefed Lavrov on U.S. military strikes against Houthi militants, stressing that Houthi attacks in the Red Sea will not be tolerated. Okay. U.S. President Donald Trump announced on Truth Social on Saturday U.S. had launched a military action against a group, citing its unrelenting campaign of piracy, violence, and terrorism against American and other ships, aircraft, and drones. Well, Russia's position is that military action is a last resort that can only be approved by the United Nations Security Council. And here again, the U.S. just unilaterally attacks. So all of Trump's statement that I can do things without war, I can do things. Maybe the message is, well, I'm no longer that Trump. I can do things without attacks. Those words need to be withdrawn because here we are. Where are the negotiations that somebody like me wants to see before on the global stage you just pounce on somebody? Okay. All of the pro-Trumpers are going to be clapping their hands going, yeah, America, America, America. Well, America sucks if we're not going to talk before, we're not going to even try a diplomatic solution on the biggest world stage, because why? Because it's the Houthis. Because we can kick the crap out of the Houthis, allegedly. We can do what we want to the Houthis because we're 10 times bigger. 100 times. Let's try this against another equal power. We're forever trying to put people in their place. Perhaps there are different ways to approach these issues than just creating more martyrs, creating more anti-American sentiment globally. This is what creates anti-American sentiment right here. We just bomb the shit out of you. Pardon the expression. We just kill all your people. Now, these are bad actors. These are bad actors. But Trump wants to say things like, well, Zelensky, I'm the one that gave you these. I'm the one that gave you the Stinger missiles. I'm the one that allowed you to go after Russia. Don't think Russia didn't hear that. They did. And they knew it anyway, but Trump is proud of it. Trump is proud to be attacking the Houthis. Where are the world's diplomacy, for God's sake? Why don't we hear about this before we go attack somebody and find out after the attack that this is what the decision was made? Now, you're the commander-in-chief. You should go do things that you think are right. I believe in that power. But starting a war, bombing the shit out of somebody, destroying another country or another person's defense, that's one thing. This isn't defense. This is not defense. if you were defending, you would start patrols on the Red Sea. You would ask for permission to do something like that. Instead, we just bomb the shit out of the other guy and say, well, there you go. We'll put you in your place. The same thing that you accuse Russia of doing. But nope, it's us. And how many times have we done that? How many times have we done that? Is Russia in the business of destroying other countries' things without discussion? Is China in that business? Is Brazil? Is India? The other big, let's take the big five. None of the big five. Europe and America, we do that crap all of the time. Now, I'm not saying I agree with the Houthis. I didn't people go, oh, geez, you don't believe in America. No, I believe in America. I don't believe in an America that attacks without diplomacy. I don't believe in America that doesn't use attacking as a extremely last resort. It should be a last resort. I don't want to be China. I don't want to be Russia. I want to be America. But I want to be an America that is strong, powerful, thoughtful, diplomatic, and honorable country. And I feel like we're losing our honor and have lost our honor in the last 30 years. We are not the America that I thought I was growing up in. And, I thought we were something bigger. And I hope we are. I hope we pull our heads out of our collective asses and start doing something the way this democracy was intended. We're just as bad as any other alleged democracy worldwide that we criticize. Any of them in Europe, certainly in Ukraine. There's just because you have an election doesn't mean you have democracy. And you can rig elections in America. Trust me, you can definitely rig them in Ukraine, or just not have them. Then we just won't have them. That'll be okay. You're playing with the cord to my headphones. But I don't know. I could ramble on that topic for a while, and I think I will. I was listening to an interesting podcast, and I want you to hear some of this guy's words. So I'm going to try to find it real quick and see if I can locate him for you and provide you that interesting information on him. His name is Andrei Martyanov, and he was interviewed by a girl named Rachel Blevins. She has her own channel, 60, 70,000 viewers. And it's he has been interviewed several times on programs. I'm going to try to get him live on the show to talk because I like the way he talks. But their article is, I'll share it on the studio here. And hopefully we can share the sound with it too. And I'll get to the point where she begins to interview him because he is a fairly interesting character. And I'm starting it in the middle and not at the starting point. So I want to just warn you that up front, that there might be a little bit of disconnect in what is said real quick, but I'll get that playing for you here and then might have to adjust it.
Yeah, we got into all of the latest with a special guest earlier, so let's take a listen to that conversation now. Joining me now to discuss is Andrei Martyanov, a veteran author and Russian military expert. Andrei, thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
My pleasure, always.
Now, I'm glad I get to talk to you today. There's been a lot going on, so let's get into the latest here. So as we know this week, officials from the US and Ukraine got together in Saudi Arabia and decided that they would present Russia with a 30-day ceasefire plan without consulting Russia and apparently without listening to everything that Moscow has been saying for months now, saying that that would not be acceptable. Now, Russian President Putin did not come out with an outright no, but he did give a very diplomatic version of saying "yet" on this, right? He said there are a number of preconditions that have to be considered. This is a very complicated conflict. So how do you view his response to what was presented to him?
Well, he told them to go pound sand. So they thought that they can issue this
Go pound
childish
sand.
so-called kindergarten level diplomacy, that they can issue some peremptory thing. Well, Russia can issue peremptory things on her own, and they are much more, weighted, so to speak. So yeah, it's just all maneuvering for the show or for PR and save their remnants of the forces in Ukraine and NATO forces there, and in some way to retain Ukraine, whatever will be left, as some kind of future arm against Russia. The United States is in their, existential fight with Russia. The way United States today exists with its political and economic system, it's the existential enemy of Russia and Russian people. So, and Trump is no different. So he's just, less aggressive outright. The rest of it, Russia called the bluff immediately. And after today clownish request to spare the lives of those in Kursk, Mr. Vladimir Putin came out, and that one wasn't, how to say it, thinly veiled. This one was outright. They are terrorists. They have two options: surrender or die. That's it. Simple as that. So if Trump thinks that he can charm Russians into, Russian elites are way more experienced and educated and cultured than Washington, D.C. So they can maybe produce impression on some, I don't know, not in Moscow.
Yeah, it was interesting to me to see that.
Let's stop on that point there, because that's very important. That's what I said in my program the other day, that this whole thing has been just a terrible joke upon the demands, the requirements. I can't believe that that's what we came to Russia with, and that's all. I mean, and we announced it all before we got there. What if that joint statement is really all you're providing, that says, all right, we're going to have a 30-day ceasefire. We're going to stop the killing right now. And then when we stop the killing, then we'll talk about the global problems, Russia's big problem with what happened here. Nobody's listening, and the Russians are on the West. And instead, they're doing the exact same thing. Europe is going, oh no, America's never going to support it. They're still trying to drag America into World War III. Zelensky's trying to drag Russia into World War III. I got news for you. It's a loss. Chalk Ukraine up to a big, fat loss. It's a nothing burger. You could probably stop right now. You could probably stop and say, there's no Kursk. There's nothing past the Dnieper River or past Dnipropetrovsk, past Kharkov. If you keep pushing, Russia will take Dnipropetrovsk, they'll take Kharkov, and they'll take Odessa. And they'll just keep on going. This war will keep on going, and Russia will take back, or if you want to call it that, the ports of the Black Sea, which have historically been Russian ports. And I'm not saying I'm for this. I'm saying I want the war to stop too. But if you don't address the reasons why the war needs to stop, the war ain't going to stop. And you can't just come in and say, let's quit firing, when these guys believe all you're going to do is resupply and keep on fighting and screw them again. Minsk 1 and Minsk 2, those are Western jokes on Russia. Those are Lucy pulling out the rug, pulling away the football from the old Charlie Brown. That's what this is. And the Russians aren't putting up with it, and the Russians are not having it. And so it's I'm going to try to get a hold of this Andrei Martyanov myself and see if I can't get him to agree to an interview with me. I think that would be very nice. I'd like to speak with him about it. Maybe there's some other topics I saw that he has some good knowledge to speak about. And maybe some of these people that are interviewing him, that's a fairly good deal. Might be nice to talk to them. So I don't know. I want to get back to the phone call on Rubio because no details were provided on the Western side, just that statement. And the State Department, and on the Eastern side, and the Russia side, says no further details were provided on the call. Following talks with U.S. officials on March 11 in Saudi Arabia, Kiev agreed to a 30-day ceasefire. Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, arrived in Moscow on Thursday to present Vladimir Putin with the details. Yeah, but nobody met with him. Putin has welcomed the ceasefire in principle, but insists on addressing several issues before it's implemented, including the fate of Ukrainian forces encircled in Kursk. While the details of Witkoff's meeting with Putin have not been made public, Trump hinted at progress, stating that the White House had received some pretty good news regarding ceasefire efforts and that U.S.-Russia meetings over the past several days have been very productive. Oh, yeah? Somebody writes, this is more fake news. This is how the U.S. does things. This statement was made by the U.S., not Russia. RT is just reporting it. The entire story was put out by Zionist news. No such conversation took place. I have no record of that conversation taking place either. It's complete fantasy. It is also used to create the impression that Russia approves of the U.S. bombings in Yemen. And I don't approve that either. And I don't approve the bombings in Yemen. I have zero belief that we're doing the right thing. And here was another good comment. Putin should be very wary of American English gentlemen agreements like the German army. Cossacks made a deal with the American Anglo-Saxons to surrender their arms and uniforms to be refitted with Western gear to fight against revolutionary enemies. I don't remember that. This great con and great betrayal ended up with the tricked Cossacks being handed over to their Soviet enemies en masse. He likes to go back into history on that. There's some but here we go. American bombs, cluster bombs, and landmines trafficked like drugs are not the answer. But in the hands of clowns, jokers, and kukli, it's just another horror movie. And you got to support some of these statements that people are, some of these comments that people are making in response to this. So I don't know. I'm not very pleased with what's going on in these scenarios. None of them are what I anticipated as far as getting rid of the killing, stopping the war in Ukraine. Sorry about the yawn there, because I am tired. I just woke up real early for some reason. Decided to do a recorded show so that I wouldn't have to appear one evening this week. So you can't call in today because I'm not here. And this is a recording. This is a recording. Please leave a message. No, but I'm just doing a quick recording for a show so that I can avoid doing a show one night this week, and still give you the information that occurred over the weekend. Is what I'm going to what I'm working on and trying to accomplish through this video. So I want to continue on with some of the weekend news because there was certainly a large amount of it presented to us as the U.S. bombs Yemen. And it's funny. It's always these small countries that they just begin to they just bomb. They just start doing it and then go, that'll teach you. I can't imagine. I'm just in shock that this is how we act. And I guarantee you that all the Trump lovers are going to be going, yeah, great, go Trump, go Trump. This is what I was worried about on the international stage. This is not good, America. And I like Trump. I'm not against Trump at all. I'm about 75. I'm 100% behind what he's doing on the in the government. Try to get rid of some of the corruption, or at least point it in a different direction. do something. Tired of the same people receiving all the benefits of owning the government. Maybe we should get the benefit of owning the government every once in a while. But recently, yesterday, old Zelensky, issues a warning about Europe's largest nuclear plant. And that is where? In Zaporizhia. Russia seized it in 2022. Russia took control of that nuclear power plant. And Zelensky wants it back. A lot of people think that his wasteful waste of real people's lives by sending them into Kursk was to take over one of Russia's largest nuclear power plants in the Kursk region. But obviously it didn't work. I don't know. And he's never really said that that's the only reason. He wanted some territory to exchange. And he knows he's not getting this power plant back. So now he's trying to bring attention to that fact. So the Zaporizhia facility has been under Russian control since March of 2022. So they seized it immediately. Okay. Russia's Zaporizhia nuclear power plant cannot exist unless it is controlled by Ukraine, says Vladimir Zelensky. The facility, the largest of its kind in Europe, has been under Moscow's control since 2022. The Zaporizhia region, where the plant is located, voted to join Russia in a referendum, following years of targeting ethnic Russians in Ukraine. Since then, now remember, this is written from the Russian point of view. Since then, I'm not saying don't believe it. I'm just saying, when we write, we tend to read in America things that are slanted, depending on the organization, either very for or very against America. Since then, both Moscow and Kiev have accused each other of attacking the facility and endangering its security. The IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, deployed a monitoring mission to the power plant in September 22, which has been present on the ground ever since. And that's happened. The IAEA, according to Zelensky, the station poses a problem to both Russia and Ukraine, but in his view, only Kiev can restore its operation. Without Ukraine, its existence is impossible in principle, the Ukrainian leader claims. He went on to say that money and specialists are needed to restore the power plant, and it would take a few years before it can be operational again, adding that the station lacks technical water to cool its reactors because of the collapse of the Kakhovka Dam on the Dnieper River. Repairs at the station would involve lots of capital-intensive processes, Zelensky said. This is our station. Lost money, lost opportunities. The power plant has been dormant since mid-2023 due to the threat of Ukrainian artillery and drone attacks and the disruption of water supplies. Speaking at a plenary session of the Eastern Economic Forum in September 24, Vladimir Putin warned of very dangerous terrorist acts perpetrated by Kiev forces against the facility. So they claim the Ukrainians are attacking this facility. In January, the Russian Defense Ministry stated that Ukrainian forces had sought to strike the station with 8 drones. All the unmanned aerial vehicles were shot down by Russian air defenses. The ZNPP is currently controlled by a subsidiary of the Russian State Energy Corporation, Rosatom. CEO Ramil Galayev stated in December that the company plans to restore the plant's operation as soon as its security is ensured. The plan also involves building a new pumping system to refill technical water reservoirs near the station. There are no unresolvable issues, he said. So there's some comments on that. If there's Zelensky claiming that only Ukraine can own the power plant is he's grasping at straws. The power plant is part of Russia now. The or Zaporizhia is part of Russia now. That's what is there to fight about in that? What is there to complain of? What is there to state differently? Russia occupies that location and the territory, agreed, and had a referendum to vote for Russia. And it wouldn't surprise me if Odessa did not do the same, and if Dnepropetrovsk also agreed to do the same and had a referendum. So, especially now that everybody's gone, the only people left are there. Anybody that had the money already left. Certainly in Zaporizhia, and so there you have it. In other news, Telegram founder, remember he was arrested last year in France. He was allowed to leave France. The Russian technical mogul was charged with multiple offenses related to what? Illegal content on his platform. So you post something that somebody disagrees with, and they just arrest you. Telegram founder Pavel Durov has been granted permission to temporarily leave France amid an ongoing investigation into alleged criminal activity on his messaging platform. AFP reported on Saturday, citing anonymous sources. Russian entrepreneur who holds citizenship in France, the UAE, and St. Kitts was arrested in Paris Le Bourget airport in August 2024. French authorities charged him with facilitating the distribution of child sexual exploitation material and drug trafficking due to alleged moderation failures on Telegram. He was later released on €5 million bail, but was barred from leaving France and required to check in with police twice a week. According to the AFP, the investigating judge accepted Durov's request to modify the condition of his supervision several days ago, allowing him to travel abroad for several weeks. He departed France this morning, a source told the agency on Saturday, while another confirmed that he left for Dubai, where he had lived for 7 years before his arrest. Telegram spokeswoman declined to comment when contacted by AFP, stating the company would issue a statement later. Durov has denied any wrongdoing, arguing that he should not be held responsible for user-generated content on the platform. Yeah. A court hearing in January, he told the judges that the platform removes between 15 and 20 million user accounts for breaking the law each month and deletes child exploitation material the same day. Telegram has also increased cooperation with law enforcement, sharing user data from around 10,000 accounts in the past 6 months. In September 2024, the company revised its privacy policy, allowing it to store metadata, including IP addresses, detailed devices, username changes, for up to a year. The policy states that this data may be provided to relevant judicial authorities if a user is suspected of illegal activity. Yeah, what is that? Durov's legal team has dismissed the charges as baseless, arguing that it is unfair to hold him accountable for crimes committed via the platform. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov criticized the case also, calling it absurd and comparing it to arresting the CEO of Renault or Citroën because a terrorist used their car. Not a bad example, but the freedom of speech. Now, I'm not saying you should be allowed to distribute anything child-related. I'm totally against that. And there ought to be ways to identify it through AI or through something to get rid of these child. Man, you look at a kid these days, you don't know if they're 15 or 35. You just can't tell. And, I don't know, so you see these things pop up on your screen all the time with you ever click on one of them dancing videos, with the Chinese girls dancing that are all over the place, you end up with about 50,000 more They have bots that come out and start sending you this, bombarding you with it, and then they find out more about you, and it ends up on your Telegram. I'm pretty open with my information and how you can get a hold of me, and I don't want to regret that too much, but it sometimes appears to me that your phone is definitely listening to you. You could be sitting somewhere and talking about. It happened to me. Couldn't have been a week ago when I was having a discussion about some obscure thing that I was looking for. People say your phone is listening to you all the time, even if it's like right now, it's laying here on the table. I haven't used it in overnight. It's just been laying there. And but now that I've talked about who knows what, Dubai, when I've said something about Dubai, something will show up on my phone inviting me to a place where I can look at Dubai, or you pick it. If I pick up, and it's sometimes disconcerting to see these instant gratification videos that show up and say, well, here's a video of this. You could say, I'm looking at replacing the drywall in my house, and I want to replace scrape away some of the texturing, and within a day you will have something like that in your feed. It will show up even if you haven't looked for it. All you do is talk to a friend about it. Somebody comes over and you share some wine together, and you talk about the wine in the wine country. Next couple of days, you're going to get videos that show up about wine. It's quite disconcerting. And I'm against my camera monitoring me and my phone. I'm against those, my friend Ike. I'm against him being charged with taking down cameras in Lake Ozark, or I'm sorry, in Camden County. In my Russian version of this podcast, which I did earlier this morning, I talked about that as well, because think about the power of the local government, or the lack thereof, depending on who you are. So we have this game being played where the Ike has been and has done exactly what he said he would do: get into office, review some things, get rid of some things, support some change, do some things differently. And he or there was an action on these traffic cameras that what do they call them, flock cameras or something like that, run by a private organization that collects all the data and then sells it so people can find you to repo your car, or can find you to arrest you if you're a cop, or can find you for, if you are a licensed private investigator, maybe you can get access to some of the things that are collecting agency and information to us. These are private companies collecting this data, but what are they going to do with it? The only people that could really use it are government. So they charge the government to access this information, and they want that information, and they want the right to collect that information. And the state, through a contract, so they have a contract that allows them to put up these cameras and collect the data, but they got to do it in compliance with law, including local law. So if you set a local law and say you can take down these cameras and nobody does it, why can't you take them down yourself? If it's a local law, there's no law preempting it, no law preempting that law. And that is the most important part of it all. What law preempts the law that you made that says I can take down this camera? And is there a stronger state law? Are you in violation of state law? Is there a state law somewhere that says, or state rule? Certainly a court couldn't rule that. Certainly a state agency couldn't order that. If they're in violation, perhaps they should be sued. Perhaps they should be arrested because they're in violation of putting up and collecting information on people that has not been approved, that is not under law, not allowed. It's just done. There's no statute, there's no way, it's just done. You're trying to find a law regarding television cameras or these flock cameras trying to collect your data in Missouri. You're not going to find one because it doesn't exist. And so the state law doesn't exist. So whose law should be superior? Looks like the county law. And if somebody's in contravention of this counter law, or why don't you arrest them? Well, because that makes it a civil. It could be a violation of the law on the county level. What's the punishment if you don't do it? What have we put? Punishment could be we remove your cameras ourselves, or is that something you just did? It's an interesting concept. It's going to be very vocal over the next couple of years because in Camden County, the courts are overwhelmed, just like in many other places, and they have so many felony cases on the docket. And the way their system is set up, they only appear, once a rotation. So the circuit judge is only there, or whatever judge is handling your case. There, I think there's 5 of them that cover these counties, and then they have associate circuit judges too. And I don't remember which circuit judge this is that is holding it, but that guy only appears, he has to appear in other counties too. And so they call him circuit. So he goes over the whole circuit, the whole 4 or 5 counties that comprise the 26th Judicial Circuit. And so he's not there all of the time. Now, you can always get a hold of a judge if you know what the hell you're doing. That's not a problem. You can get a hold of his secretary. You can get a hold of that judge, and you can communicate with that judge and get a decision from that judge because that's his job and that's what he's supposed to do. But for appearances and hearings and having testimony taken and doing courtroom things, that's hard to schedule in Camden County. So poor old Ike is going to have to be in this hamster wheel for the next 2 years, year and a half, unless he fights it. And I think it needs to be fought. I think it should be a big fight. I think he should countersue. I think all kinds of things on this case. Especially as a former lawyer, I'm sitting there going, what would I do? What would I do if this was me? Well, I know I'd certainly fight this charge all the way. And, he's not getting a jury trial in Camdenton for a long time. It's not like it is on TV where you get charged and a couple of weeks later you're having a full jury trial and they've had all the time to find all the witnesses and all of that. That don't happen in real life. That is not the case, especially in Camden County. You get a jury trial. Gotta wait your turn, buddy. There's a lot of cases in there. So people try to get rid of them with the preliminary hearing, which will be also quite critical, in my humble opinion, for the old Ikester. And but as an anti-government corruption person like me, making decisions that are for thee but not for me, is ridiculous. The people attacking Ike are doing it for political gain, for political reason, and they control the power. That's the problem with government power running amok, and they destroy lives. Now, for real crimes, that's different. If Ike was really stealing something, why charge the guy with something you can't prove? You're never going to prove stealing. Ike wasn't stealing, and it. You charge that so you could get a felony to make it worse for him, to pay for him. So he has to pay for what. That's why you charge the felony. You didn't charge the felony because you think he's guilty of it. You charge the felony to get it to a bigger threat of loss on the backside because it's a misdemeanor at best, and it's probably not even that. And I think I got to win this thing, and I think you got to sue the shit out of everybody involved, including my friend Rochelle Christensen, who I always liked. I always thought she was a bit on the odd side in our political deals. Our political ideas never matched. She was a Democrat, pretend Republican for a while, and she's a centrist. You can switch sides. I'd never become a Democrat. I don't believe their massive control over other people is what is necessary in this world, and I just don't support that. So you can never get me to be a Democrat, particularly because of the big government ideas that all of them have, that if there's a question, only the government can answer it. Whatever your question, whatever your desire, only the government can provide it, and it's provided through sucking up to elected officials and sucking up to the people that work in that government. I don't believe that. I believe that everyone should have a. You ever go into had an army sergeant that had a army. He was the supply sergeant, and he had a big sign on his desk hanging there from the front of his desk, big piece of paper, and it said, "Your failure to plan does not create my emergency." Okay, and what he was saying is, and this is absolutely true, never come to him if you have an emergency. Never come to him if you have something that needs to be taken care of right away, because he has a process. He has a procedure. He has a way of doing things that he don't give a shit about your problems. Is basically the answer to that question. So your failure to plan does not create my emergency. Well, guess what? Somebody's got to create an emergency sometimes, because emergencies exist. And sometimes there's a policy and a procedure, and you have a way to get around it. Or people just don't listen to you, like the supply sergeant saying, well, fill out this requisition form and I'll get back with you in the next couple of days, when something arrives. All he is a supply sergeant. But he was God in that supply room. And you meet gods in government all the time. And the gods in government are people who, they like their power, they like their order, and they like what they're doing, and they don't want you cocking with it in any fashion. And so if you interfere with their day, they bring whatever that is, could be minor. And this happens all of the time. They select who they target for attention by the government. They use their discretion to attack certain people, but that discretion is never used to attack anybody that believes as they believe. I believe that Rochelle Christensen wanted this felony, wanted Ike to be charged with something, loves these cameras for some reasons. And so disagreements turn into, I'm using the government against you. That's what they turn into. Be interesting to find out what role Rochelle really played in getting this actually filed, filing a felony. The decision to turn it into a felony instead of just a ordinance violation of some sort, because they know he wasn't stealing it. They know that. They know he asked them to remove it, and they never did. And he knows, and they know that this is just political BS. But I think he needs to go all the way. I think he needs to do a motion to dismiss first. Then when that doesn't work, because it won't, then you do a preliminary hearing. You do a full preliminary hearing. You bring in all witnesses, all everything, and you talk to everybody as much as you can, and you make this as public and as violent as possible. And you consider filing suit at the same time against the yahoos who created this debacle, including Rochelle Christensen. And I like you, Rochelle. I think you're a reasonably decent person, but this constant government power trip that people like you love is a severe problem for those of us who believe that the government is supposed to be there in a minimalist minimalist fashion and shouldn't control in all these damn Democrats, all these damn neocons. And in fact, most of the government people that started out as good people and then end up stuck in that system, whether they envy people who don't support it, I don't know what the issue is. They can't believe they're doing the right thing, destroying people's lives and trying to destroy Ike's life because you have a political disagreement is just wrong. And you have a political disagreement. And so how do you stop him? You take him down. That's how you do it. You find those things in his life that, just like the Missouri Bar did with me, you find an excuse to take them out. And my story is pretty well known, and they don't want that story. And it's a long story. The problem with my story is it's so involved that nobody has the time to listen to it. But it's true, and it's the same exact thing. So Ike, I'm with you 1,000,000%. Stand strong and screw these people. Fight them every step of the way. And I support you. I'm behind you. If you need anything from me, I will attempt to assist you. I have sued the government my share of times. I went all the way to the Supreme Court. Where's my little book? I have a little book here somewhere that proves it. That I went to United States Supreme Court. I don't remember where I threw it, but maybe it's in one of my drawers here. But usually I keep it around to refer to it. And just printing the book for the, what do you call it? For the loonies at the Supreme Court. Everything in the world is done. Everything in the world is done on computer. And I'll bet you almost anything that these judges don't read these books in the format that you provide them. They read it online, just like everybody else does, because the entire book and everything in the federal court system gets submitted online. But to deter people from filing United States Supreme Court cases, the cost of printing the books to supply to the judges, 9 of them, you have to print these books, is $10,000. 8,900 plus some other shipping fee or something like that I had to pay. And then they send it back and they say you missed some page or whatever. And I had it done professionally. I should have told the guy he had to do it for free. But they told me they wouldn't accept what I sent, and I had to pay it again and pay that. Had to come up with another $8,500 or whatever it was, pay this guy to print those books again and send it up to the Supreme Court. And you get, I don't know, 48 of them. There's a minimum. And then they send you so many. So each judge gets like 5 or 6 copies of these stupid books that everywhere else in the entire process in the federal court system, it's all done by electronic, push a button and off it goes. You telling me that some old judge has to have a book to read that he's never going to read, by the way. They don't read them. They look at it online just like everybody else. I don't believe that these 9 Supreme Court justices are up there reading these books. BS. They aren't looking at the books. And in fact, they never looked at mine. There are 9 Supreme Court judges. And I guarantee you, not one of them even looked at the book or read it. It was dismissed by some clerk somewhere else, because what they do is they have a clerk check it out. I have zero faith in our Supreme Court system. The only ones that get attention are cases like Donald Trump. You get something, they'll get together and boy, they'll talk about that, but they don't take questions. They decide which questions are important. You don't decide, you know, and then the answer is one word, not like a judge. The answer is one word, and that word is no. And that's it. And that's the end. And it's not no to you. It's no to the case. We don't decide such cases. We decide that those cases. We decide which cases we're going to decide, and we don't want to decide your case. And some people would argue that that's a decision, but it's not. And it's not a decision. And only 5 or 6% of the cases that go to the Supreme Court get actually heard. So the real power is in the federal appellate courts down below. Okay. So when you get a case that's in federal court and you sue the government, and nobody wants you to be able to sue the government, it's supposed to be extremely hard, and it is. But I think Ike should do it, and get used to losing, because these guys have all kinds of immunities. The prosecutor, if you can get past prosecutorial immunity, you can, but they have to have done something. And if it's outside of prosecution, outside of a prosecutor's duties, it has to be completely outside of her duties. And the federal courts always protect the government. 98% of the time, they protect the government actors. So you got to know that going in. And I knew going in that I was going to lose in the end. I thought there was a tiny chance that I might win, but the question had to be sent up, because the question is a vital question. But the Supreme Court ignored the question. That's how the system works. If they don't like the question, or they don't think the question is important enough, they just deny it. Well, and then the states down below go, yeah, that looks like we can still do exactly what we want. Or the bad actors down below, because they're always protecting the bad actor political person who got elected, or who got appointed, or is a guard, is a jail you cannot sue these people. And Missouri has even worse, even stricter methods of, you have to, you can't sue a government actor. It's extremely difficult. They have official immunity. And official immunity is very similar to qualified immunity. And disqualified immunity, as long as you're a government official acting in your government capacity, you're immune from suit if you're doing something in that capacity. That's the basics of it. And then there are lots of discussions, and it's different according to which jurisdiction you're in. So in Missouri, they're in the 8th Circuit, and the 8th Circuit covers Missouri, Iowa, I think Minnesota, South Dakota, North Dakota, Nebraska. That's what I think. And I think that's right. And so you have 5, 6 states in there. And those states are in the 8th Circuit. And those decisions that they make somewhat lean to the Republican side. Somewhat. But the judges that end up in there they all become liberal assholes because they're untouchable. They are untouchable once they get appointed as a federal judge. You can't touch them. You can't do it. You can't force anything. And they have their own political views. They have to tone them down to get appointed in the first place. They got to get past the hearing committees in the state house, or not state house, in the Congress in American Congress. So in order to be appointed, they have the judicial committee that examines them, and it's BS. They just basically, and 90% of them, just it's a rubber stamp, and off they go. And I'm not against that process. I am against the fact that the bulk of them haven't been lawyers before. The bulk of them have only been prosecutors, judges. They don't know what it's like to make a living as an attorney. They have no idea. They're just government all the time. And that is or even worse, academics who've never practiced. They just teach. Okay, you teach the law. And any person that knows anything about law and law school would tell you that in law school, they don't teach you anything. They don't teach you how to do anything. All they do is teach you theory and thought processes. and how to wade through problems, how to wade through stacks of law and stacks of and sources and all the things like that. Law school was interesting, but law school was theory. Practice is completely different. So these people that are only academics went from law school to become academics and then become appointed to a government job. Trust me, they're all a government judgeship, government prosecutorial, whatever. They're all they've known is the heavy hand of government that they get to regulate, and they know that once they become a judge, they're an untouchable part of that wheel, and they can do what they want when they want, and they are untouchable and rich, and they know it. And so that is the dream of your Rochelle Christensen types, to get one of those cush deals on the federal court system. And I'm not against federal court system; it has to exist. But what I'm against, and what nobody likes to hear, is that I don't believe any of these things should be lifetime appointments. I think that is horseshit. And that is where the big problems come in. And that is where our founders made a serious mistake. Because, and especially on the judge side, I can understand JR and Ike's arguments about how you want your state reps on the federal level, like in the Senate and the House of Representatives. You don't want them to be term limited because you don't want to lose the good ones. We don't have any good ones. Where are the good ones? Where are they? Josh Hawley? Oh, come on. That guy's a hack and always has been. And all he cares about is glamming for the camera. How do I get on the next camera? That dude will run for president one day, or he'll try to be attorney general, or he'll do something like that. He'll get appointed by some administration, Republican, to do something. Frankly, surprised he didn't tap him for something in the Trump administration. Not that he's a huge Trumper, I don't believe that, but the guy is he's a system lover. He's right there. I wrote him a letter about my issues. Didn't even get a response. Nothing. Zero. The only person that responded was on the Judicial Committee was Ted Cruz, and he sent me a letter, responded, told me what he thought, and which was his thoughts were, I'm not involved in this, and I wouldn't in this estate matter and go to the state. Okay, fine. I disagree with that position too, by the way, but I have done that route. I wrote the Supreme Court. They deny my case in one word. I wrote to the governor. He said Supreme Court handles that. I wrote the entire Judiciary Committee in the state of Missouri. Zero. I sued them. Zero. And they do not want to. No one will bump up against the bar or the lawyers in the legal system. They won't do it. So if you think that corruption doesn't exist, I got news for you. You're definitely mistaken, because it definitely exists. And it exists in the common efforts of all involved to foreclose speech, to foreclose individual efforts to get something changed, to get some change done, all for the sake of maintaining the same power that they've had in the same hands, and they want it to continue to stay in the same hands of government. I hope you appreciate all that. If you ever want to listen to me, I'm doing this one as a recording. I wish to do, and I want to. I'm gonna probably put it on for Monday, the 17th of March, St. Patty's Day. And those of you who didn't know, and I'm actually recording it on the morning of Sunday, the 16th, based on the news that I received therein. I'm going to introduce this tomorrow and then leave the station. And I'm happy you're part of the show. I'm happy to all who listen to me, and listen to my podcasts, you can do it in English. It's at internationalflavor.podbean.com, or in Russian, should you so desire, at internationalflavorrussian.podbean.com. I also have, this is a video I did today. You can watch the video on YouTube on International Flavor. And then I have my Russian speaking channel is at Samuel Trapp. I appreciate all of you listening today, and have a very good evening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.